Well, let's talk about this one now, and it's a big one. The South African Association of PhDs is calling for criminal charges against people who misrepresent their qualifications. It also says stricter vetting procedures should be ensured at institutions to prevent the misrepresentation of credentials. But what legislation exists to ensure this happens, and how effective has it been in reining in chances? South African Association of PhDs Treasurer General Professor Cameron Modisane joins me now. Cameron, good evening to you and welcome. Thank you very much for your time. Some would say, you know what, it's harmless to say, you know, that you have a PhD if it's not in the medical field or you're not killing anyone or prescribing medicine and faking procedures. But from your perspective, why is that, you know, a false perspective?
Firstly, it is, thank you for inviting us, Iman. Firstly, it is dishonest to lie about your qualification. You know, having a PhD, for example, I supervise students in terms of them actually taking their own PhDs. Imagine if I had to lie about my PhD, what about the caliber of students which I would be producing as an academic? So it's quite important in terms of the knowledge system and also as part of the knowledge production as well, that we need to follow the letter of the law in terms of the National Qualifications Amendment Act of 2019.
Well, I want to pick up there on that point. So there is that National Qualification Framework Amendment Act of 2019, and it exists, and there are some very important recommendations that it makes in terms of the law. How does it address the issue of the misrepresentation of qualifications?
For example, if a person lies or embellishes their CV, this person can actually be charged in terms of this act. For example, if you lie and with the intention of gaining financial reward in terms of compensation, favor, etc., you could be charged in terms of contravention of the act. It could be either a fine or an imprisonment for a period of up to 5 years. So there are actually some strict punishment in terms of lying about your qualifications in this country.
So I want to go back then to the issue of vetting. We touched on that briefly, that it really is up to, or I mentioned it in the introduction, it is up to institutions to make sure that they follow that process quite scrupulously. In South Africa, we have organizations like yours, but we also have the South African Qualifications Association. So there is an infrastructure of support to ensure that the candidate that you are bringing in is who they say they are. But why would you say that, you know, this falls through the cracks in some instances with some individuals?
I think with most organizations, it's quite important that companies actually do vet their employees, including professional organizations. For example, in our association of PhDs, we require an individual to submit a copy of their qualifications, a copy of their thesis, a university transcripts, including verifying with the registrar of the universities. All those things are quite important to have checks and balances in place. And also, we're calling on all companies in the country to make sure that before they employ any employees, that they do this vetting process, because some people out there, they're actually lying and they do produce fake certificates which are not actually accredited with any institution in this country or abroad as well.
In the earlier interview that we did with Professor Glenda Daniels from WITS, you know, again, this issue of fact-checking came up, and it's quite a strong one. We live in a world where, you know, we go on social media, you know, pictures, information, images are disseminated at lightning speed, they catch fire and they go everywhere and things become viral. But in a discipline like academia, when it comes to the verification process of qualifications, is there a common practice amongst universities or, you know, institutions of higher learning around giving people who inquire, members of the public, journalists and the like, access to those documents, or is it quite a closely guarded process? I guess what I'm getting at is some people produce, documents in the public domain purporting to be something, but how do we know it's real? And whether institutions, willy-nilly, share copies of people's degrees and accomplishments?
In this country, there are some private vetting agencies, such as EMI, whereby individuals can actually use in terms of the vetting process. And also, organizations can actually even approach the registrar of any university, write to them and say, we've got this individual, he claims to have this qualification. Is it actually true? It's actually quite easy to get that from any university, around getting a copy of the transcripts, and also verify that indeed they did obtain that qualification which they claim to have in their CVs.
In South Africa, or is this global practice?
I know, particularly in South Africa, it's quite easy to do. With most institutions, it's quite easy to get that. In terms of global practice, obviously, different institutions have got different practices and policies, and some institutions are close to guard in terms of giving information to third parties, and also the particular employee would have to give you permission in order for them to actually investigate them, and also for the institution to actually release their transcripts as well.
All right. So again, message then: don't fake it till you make it. And if you do, in South Africa anyway, and you could face the prospect of litigation and prosecution. Thank you for that clarity tonight. We appreciate your time. South African Association of PhDs Treasurer General, Professor Cameron Modisane.